Great. Hi, thanks so much for joining us here today at the SDG Media Zone at Cannes Lions, supported by NASCO. We're here at the Goals House, powered by SAP and Deloitte Digital. Today we're going to be chatting with Bruce Reynolds and Jim Joseph about building purposeful workplace cultures and insight-driven ideas that inspire action. So I'd like to turn it over to Bruce and Jim to introduce themselves and a little bit about their work.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm Bruce Reynolds, thank you. I am the Social Impact Director at Dentsu Aegis Network, and I cover North Americans. Yes, and so in my role, I really look at how do the organizations we align ourselves with to help make the world a better place. We're all about innovating the way brands are built. It's important that we do that by example. And we have these 17 goals that we're in alignment with. We have a focus on goal number 3, which is health and well-being. So we support a campaign to end malaria, more. And I ended there.
That's awesome. And I'm Jim Joseph. I'm the global president of Burson, Wolfe, or as we say, BCW, a global marketing communications agency, offices all around the world. My job is really bringing teams together and making sure that we've got the right resources aligned across our clients, which range across probably virtually every industry. And we spend a lot of time on culture, because culture is very important when you're in service business. Any business, culture is important, particularly in service business where you have to center on clients. You got to have a culture where people thrive. Because we spend a lot of time on it.
Wonderful. So going over to the topic of insight-driven ideas and driving action, what does insight mean in the context of this conversation and the work that we're here to talk about at Cannes?
Yeah, so insight to me is really like listening and being curious, and how do you take that information and then basically engage people, and that can be like what also used is the goals, the 17 goals behind this, because it's they're important goals, there are a lot of them, and the challenge is how do you get people interested in them ultimately, because you can have one may appeal to me and not necessarily appeal to you or even Jim or my 14-year-old nephew. When you listen to the different conversations that age group or target market about that helps me inform and be more informed, I should say, to then provide insight to a relevant campaign.
Excellent. And so when you talk about listening, in what ways are you all doing that? And are you listening internally and externally, and how are you applying some of those learnings?
Yes, my personal approach, I like to listen to what's happening on the streets, ultimately, because I do believe what happens on the streets fuels a lot of what ultimately happens up through the ranks. So I do intentionally put myself in different circles and with different groups and with different people to hear what's going on, what's happening. And that, I guess, is whether it's my sweet spot or that's my superhero, ability that people like to use nowadays. But I tend to listen to what's happening on the streets in all these different communities, and then take it from there.
Excellent. And Jim, so what does insight mean to you, and how are you all applying some of these learnings and practices?
It's funny, insight is one of those marketing words that can quickly become a buzzword. Mm-hmm. Everybody uses it, but not everybody really understands what it is. And to me, understanding what an insight really is what sets apart, really good marketing or a really good campaign from ones that probably aren't going to be as effective. And a lot of people think that a data point is an insight, or a statistic is an insight. And the truth is that that's actually not an insight, that's just data. An insight is this unique little nugget about somebody that makes them uniquely in need of your brand. If you're trying to sell a product or a service. That's an insight. And that then becomes the little nugget, we call little nuggets, that you then can create a great campaign to actually inspire action.
And when you talk about a great campaign, and I know we're here at Cannes talking about creativity, where do we find great campaigns, and where do you find creativity? What is good creative?
A good creative, in my mind, can come, I say this all the time, can come from anywhere. It's not just a creative by job title who's creative. Creative is coming up with a unique way to solve a problem, or to think about something, or to motivate somebody. And really good creative is based on an insight. You're not going to get great creative if you don't have an insight. And we see a lot of teams, even within our organization, we see a lot of teams who jump right to an idea, and they'll often come to me and say, "Hey Jim, is this a good idea?" And I'll say, I don't know, because what's the insight? If you tell me what the insight is, then I can tell you if that's a good idea. And I think a lot of the work that we're seeing get applauded here at CAN comes from a really deep insight. I saw a preview the other day of The Look from P&G, which is addressing racism. It is based on really deep insights about what these guys go through. That's an insight, and that sparks great creative, and that's going to start conversations that people should be having.
And so interesting that you mentioned that work and sort of talking about how creative can be anybody within the organization. It sounds like you're really building purpose into your business. So I want to hear a little bit more about how sort of purpose is driving culture at both of your organizations. Bruce, how are you kind of leaning into that?
Yeah, and so insight in kind of all the, I mean, culture is huge. You know what I mean? Like culture is basically values and beliefs, and everybody has their own. So when they all come together in a workplace, there's many that you have to manage. So it's so important to really find what's the common culture that one can create, or what's the third culture that one can create. With like, okay, so they have their culture over there. I mean, we may have our corporate culture over here. What's the third culture we can create in those two? So we're really big on that because culture is huge, and ultimately, to serve, the business and our clients, and ultimately society, it's so important that we keep up a positive culture.
And how are you sort of attracting talent and creative ideas using culture and the purpose that you're sort of, obviously doing things out in the world? And so how are you kind of putting some of that into practice?
So in my role, we are in the business of storytelling, and in my role, I like to inspire people to talk about creativity, and I think it's so important that you're able to challenge and inspire. I think those two things are so important. So for me, what I've been doing is one way to kind of set ourselves apart from others out there. I do like internal pop-up art exhibitions, for example. So using these goals, because it's so important that we communicate these goals to our team members, to our employees, and even to our clients that come through the door, I created a pop-up art exhibition called, the first one was called Legacy. And I picked 3 artists, and each artist was connected to one of the goals, ultimately. So one of the artists was a cancer survivor, which was number 3. Another artist, her great-great-great-grandmother was a runaway slave who made her way to Canada. And so her work, the artist's work, was recreation of the wanted posters that were issued when the slaves ran away. So I connected that to modern day human trafficking and modern day slavery. It's currently 40 million people. So that was her and her artist and her work. And then the other artist, Thomas Clark, African American, nearly 70, got his first moving image camera when he was 11, or so, over 5 decades ago. So for an African American boy to have a camera 50 years ago, his POV and his lens would be so different. His work is phenomenal. So he was another one that I had, and he was related to Goal 17, I think it is, which is about partnerships with the goals. No, I think it's maybe 16. Yeah, Youth Justice and Strong Institutions. So those are the 3 artists that I had, and then each of their work and the narrative was just so strong. And so that was a way for me to bring in storytelling, bring in these goals, and also show talent, respective talent, and everything that, we're different, because it was all in the main lobby area and everything.
Interesting. And how about you? How are you bringing sort of purpose into your culture of the organization?
It's interesting. Purpose is another word getting tossed around a lot. And a lot of people, I think, narrowly mean purpose to be charity or giving back. And it is that, absolutely. But actually, I think of it more about being purposeful. So doing something, whether it's an initiative, a campaign, a new product launch, that is going to do something in the world. It might have a charity component. It might be about giving back, certainly, and that's great when it is. And if you can weave a component of that in, that's even better. But that might just be purposeful. It's designed to have some sort of an impact. You think about Bumble, like that dating app. I don't know if they describe themselves that way, but their purpose is to help women take control of the dating situation. That's a great purpose. So at BCW, we believe our purpose is moving people. So we work for our brands, our clients, and we help them move people in one way, shape, or form, either to change legislation, or to buy new products, or to change their perception in the marketplace. That is like single-mindedly what our purpose is. So, and it covers a really broad, again, as an agency, you have to have a broad purpose. And then in terms of actually doing purpose work, like charity or giving back, we're still kind of in the phase of figuring out exactly what that looks like. We newly merged about a year ago, so we're on that journey of figuring out how do we now want to also give back.
I think it's really smart to be thoughtful about it, and I think finding those places that are organic to your business is so important when you're entering into this kind of work. So I guess building on that, how do you inspire people, Jim, in your organization to take action, whether that be action for the client or action in their own lives?
Yeah, interesting. We talk about this a lot because we're in a service business, so we're all so focused on our clients, and our clients are our bosses. And our clients are the reason why we come in to work every single day. And as a result, we can get very sort of hyper focused on clients and forget about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And even as a leader of the organization, I have to remember that, yes, our clients are the boss, but my clients are my people. And because they're the ones doing the work, and they're the ones they're making the money for the organization. So I have to create an environment where they feel, motivated, and they can thrive, they can be creative, because you can't be creative if you're bogged down. And now, in particular, we're working on a lot about also an environment where you feel safe. You feel safe to disagree with somebody, because that's good creativity. Or you feel safe to show up who you are, and dress the way you dress, and talk the way you talk, and be who you want to be. That's a part of our journey now, too, is making that sort of a safe environment. Because also creativity is about having diverse thinking on a team, and you have to have people that come from different places if you're going to do really great creative.
Absolutely.
And I definitely agree with everything that says there, especially the part of diversity as well, because I think it's, if you can't see it, then how can you really be it? And if you're not really represented, then how do you feel confident your voice will be heard, or that you can even share your voice? And so I think diversity is so important when it comes to creating a safe space and a safe place, for people to really be themselves and bring themselves to work.
Excellent. So in talking about action, what is your primary call to action when it relates to sort of what we've been talking about all week, what we're talking about here as it relates to the SDGs and Goals House? What would be your call to action, both personally and then also through your organization?
I think the call to action to really everyone is to really recognize and be aware of the condition of where the world is. Like someone asked me the question of what keeps you awake at night and what wakes you up in the morning, classic question. And I was like, the state of the world and the state of the world. It's a case of we are at an emergency on many different levels, and I'm so surprised at how many people aren't either aware of it or they are aware of it, but they are not doing that much about it. And it's really interesting, actually. I was on a trip, and on cigarette packets in Europe right now, on cigarette packets, it shows all the dangers of smoking tobacco with, cancer and all those ugly images and things like that. And it was so fascinating to see someone look at it, read it, open up, and it still roll up.
Yeah. It
was really, really fascinating, because I thought, wow, it's right there in black and white, and they're still choosing to do that. And I understand it may be a draw from the body, but even so, like, wow, that's interesting. So if they're doing that, seeing that and reading that, we've got a lot of work to do regarding these.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I think, to answer your question, it's really about engaging people, and I would say inspiring people. If those two things don't work, then hey, go for fear.
You're gonna become a cigarette. Wow. And Jim, how are you finding?
Same place, exactly. But just a slightly different spin on it. It's funny because I used to think that our call to action and my own call to action was creativity and ideation. In fact, I would remember I was asked in an interview situation, like, what's the one thing you look for when you're interviewing people? And I used to always say creativity. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, no matter what the job, a CFO, creativity. And then I realized creativity and ideation, it's kind of table stakes for us. Like that's the business we're in. So of course you're going to be creative. And I realize now that our call to action and my call to action is empathy. And when I interview candidates now, I look for empathy. Like, can you understand the person that you're sitting next to working? Or can you understand the client? Can you understand that maybe they're in a really bad mood because they're having a really bad day someplace else.
Mm.
And having empathy for the consumer you're targeting and creating a campaign for, like you have to understand them. You have to walk in their shoes, or you can't create something for them. And understand your clients, and for me, understand my teams, like what do they need to be creative and to ideate. So for me, that's the new call to action is empathy.
So building on that, what should your creative do? How are they applying this empathy? What are some of the sort of skills and tools that they're using to bring back to their work?
Yeah, I think two things. One is a diverse team. And diversity that you can see, but also diversity that's in people's heads.
Right.
Their experiences, where they come from, what they've been through, where they want to go. So empathy comes from diversity because no one individual can understand everything. So you need a team of people to understand it. But also, really, really understanding who you're targeting. And really understanding what is going on in their lives, not just the statistics, not just the data, but actually like, what struggles are they going through? What stresses them out? What are their barriers that they go through? Because then you can find out how you, whether you're selling a product or a service, how you can solve that for them. And that's what we try to instill in everybody. That's the goal. But you can't get there without sort of the diversity of thinking.
Yeah, and I just to go on top of that, I also think it's so important that we don't always acknowledge or see the power of choice, our powerful choices in that. When we all go into our places of work, whether we work from home, in a home office, or we go into a building, we all need to choose whether we leave our personal baggage, at the door, so that we can be empathetic for others. Because sometimes we can be so wrapped up in ourselves that to be empathetic to someone else when I've got my own stuff going on in my own head, you know what I mean? And so it's so important to choose to leave, our own stuff, because we are in positions of power at the end of the day. We are in positions of influence, and I think sometimes we can lose sight of that. So I think empathy is absolutely huge, but also empowering and communicating to staff in some way, or to them in some way. We need to make sure that we've got our clear heads. We've got our own battles that we can be empathetic to our co-workers, and those and customers that ultimately serve.
Yeah, and I want to build on something that you said earlier, and I think that it relates a lot to this sort of empathy and the way that you're working with creativity. I want to talk a little bit about storytelling and how you're using storytelling to drive action, because I think that's something so interesting about communicators and people in this space, and especially some of the conversations we've been hearing here all week. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about storytelling to drive action.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I use storytelling in many different ways, because I believe if I empower those that are working on the various accounts and things like that, then they ultimately can serve our clients and society better. So working from the inside out, so to speak, I use many different opportunities to storytell. So I call it like the Bruceopus approach, so the octopus approach, right? Where we have, the call about how many other points can I hit with the same thing. So, for example, we're in June is Pride, and people have many different views around Pride, and there's certainly LGBTQ, what does it mean? Some don't get it, some do, and all of that. So it's like, how do we communicate that? Really, this is just a time of equality at the end of the day. This is what this is about, So that was the narrative in terms of storytelling that I took. So at our place, we did, I did something just called Show Your Pride. Just show you whatever it is, just show your pride. And then I built on the story of that Stonewall, and I drip fed that in, and got people engaged in this 50th anniversary this year, and things like that. And it was amazing how many people came out and said, that was a really interesting approach to actually just show your pride, you know what I mean? And then we did drinks, across the office, things like that. And then there is messaging on our TV screens as well, all around showing your pride. It's really empowering people to do that. So that's one part of storytelling that I chose to use. And the other part, as I mentioned, was the art is another way of storytelling. Also, in terms of storytelling, I'll hold things like knowledge sessions, for example.
What is a knowledge session?
So whatever the topic is, or the subject, so for example, if we're working on a pro bono campaign or something like that, just so people have a solid foundation, sometimes you can just get something that I just think we should always move from a place of assumption. You know, so really that is what a knowledge session is. It's a case of let's not assume anything here, and let's just hold a knowledge session. And it's amazing what can come out of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Jim, how are you sort of leveraging storytelling to drive action taking?
For me, storytelling is sort of a new way to market because, you know, back in the day, and I've been around for a little while now, you know, back in the day it was really brands just sort of talking at people and pushing product messages, you know, lower your cholesterol by 10%, 50% more of this. I mean, it was just like out. And it worked for many times, for many years. But what I find about storytelling is it forces brands to like step away from themselves. It's really in any category, the product features are pretty much the same. And in most categories, the consumer knows the product features. Like they know that laundry detergent gets their clothes clean. And they know that. So storytelling forces the brand to step away from itself and actually talk about their consumers.
Right.
And not talk at them, but sort of talk with them. And make them see themselves in the brand. To me, that's the magic of storytelling and why it's working so well now. And also, you don't need 30-second broadcast television advertising to do that. It also forces you to use, you know, a much more multi-channel approach, which is also more effective to reach folks who are in different places. One thing I wanted to mention about Pride, because you sparked it in my head, what I found so amazing this year, I feel like there's been this seismic shift between last year and this year, where, you know, we went from Pride Parade on one day to Pride Weekend to Pride Week, and now it's Pride Month. And Pride has taken on it is equality now. Like, it's not about, well, it used to be about being gay, and it's you know, broadened from there, luckily. And now it's broadened to, no, I just want everyone to be equal in everybody else's eyes. And we're seeing people that don't affiliate with a letter, you know, with one of those specific letters, embrace it, be a part of it, and I think it's just, that's been, and brands coming in, you know,
Absolutely.
for it too,
All that, yeah.
which is, I think,
Anything else you guys want to sort of chip in about sort of impact insights and driving purposeful workplaces?
Yeah, you know, I've really seen us over the last year just how much people do want to get engaged and people do want to make a difference in some small way, but they don't always know how, you know. And so I think we're at a stage now of sharing the how kind of what can people do to make a difference. And I think that is now the new challenge, really, showing people, giving them like really easy steps and easy guides and easy ways as well. Because it is amazing, even some of these recycling bins can be quite confusing. Like people come to me, literally,
unbelievable.
you know, I don't know where this paper cup goes. It's kind of coated in something, and I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's got a little food in it. What do I do with
I know.
that?
I have a panic every time in the office.
Right.
I feel like I'm gonna get shamed on Slack.
So I really think the challenge now is, really help to educate people and show them what they can do, and that really goes right along the whole chain of this as well. You know, so it's great having the recycling bin, but even maybe on the cups that I produce, having diagrams that if it's got food in there, then you can wash it out and put it away or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're at.
Okay. And how about you, Jim?
I think the one thing I would add to that is that culture and culture with purpose and creativity, even for that matter, it starts from the ground up. And I think, you know, back in the day, we used to think it had to come from the top down. And it has to be supported by the top. You have to participate if you're at the top. You have to like throw in your own ideas. But it actually has to come from here. It has to come from the people that are living it and who actually are the culture and are the creativity of the organization. Like they've got to create it, and it's got to be co-created with them. And I want to be a part of it. But it's not me saying, well, these are the 3 things we're going to do now. It's all of us sort of figuring it out.
Yeah.
What we want.
Yes, I agree with that, and I do think it is all of us. It is a case of all hands on deck, because, you know, we have meetings and things like that, obviously, and there'll be food left over and things, and somebody needs to be the ambassador to say, okay, what do we do with that leftover salad, or what do we do with this food? How can we repurpose it? You know, because food waste is a huge issue here. You have 1 in 7 Americans, you know, dealing with food insecurity, meaning they don't know where the next meal is coming from, and that's just one issue. You know, amongst a plethora. So it really is, you know, all of that. And that's going back to what I was mentioning earlier about all of us kind of choosing to be aware and then looking at what can we do. And then again, making it easy to do that.
I love that. I love the idea of an ambassador for impact. So I think this is the time that we have today.
Okay,
So
great.
thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for the
Welcome.
SDG Media Zone for having us here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.